Well, I think Donald Trump pointed out that they had a very high level of confidence that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Later on, President Bush was forced to say publicly on national television that we were wrong, that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So high level of confidence, means that, yeah, it probably happened, but it doesn't mean that it did happen. And they have admitted there is no single intercept that was a smoking gun. In other words, there was no absolute proof. And in fact, it troubled me that they relied on the fact that they detected that the inner circle in Russia was very pleased that Trump was elected president. Well, I was very pleased that Trump was elected president, so I'm not sure. Am I guilty of hacking because of that? I find that to be no proof whatsoever. And it's troubling that an intelligence agency would rely on that as proof.
Well, despite the report itself clearly admitting that there is no proof, the mainstream media have already jumped the gun and backed the allegations.
There's no room for questioning the evidence that has been presented that makes very clear that they deliberately conducted this effort.
They were trying to more disrupt their actions, and that's their strategy all around the globe. It's just to blur the picture.
Massive interference in American elections, trying to denigrate Hillary Clinton.
Vladimir Putin personally was involved in this. B, that the hack was directed to advantage Donald Trump himself rather than to just sow chaos.
Well, actually, the technique that they're using is repetition from multiple directions. They're using the U.S. mainstream media, which simply regurgitates what they say. They're using different members of Congress and different members of the administration, agency heads, all to say the same thing. Here's how you win a war or win an argument, regardless of whether or not you have a valid syllogism or argument. You simply repeat it over and over again until it gets believed. I mean, that's fundamentally what our founding principles are. We question everything the government does. That's in the First Amendment. Our mainstream media is supposed to do that. So, but they're not. They're ignoring that.
The reality is that we're seeing a degree of subjectiveness in the U.S. media and political circles which we have never, ever seen before. Well, journalistic standards in the U.S. and I venture to say globally are declining dramatically. We're seeing far more subjective journalism portrayed as news reporting than ever before. We're seeing a far greater use of adjectives, a far greater use of loaded terminology than we've ever seen. There's far less real investigative work to verify material than I've ever seen in my career. I would say that there's hardly a journalist on the mainstream media today in the US, for that matter in Australia or Britain, that I would hire to do an objective, analytical job of work.
Meanwhile, following Donald Trump's meeting with the intelligence community, he still believes there was no influence on the election results. Trump acknowledged countries like Russia and China are trying to break US cyber infrastructure, but didn't play a role in who became president. He says he will deal with the problem when he takes office. His concern, though, is that the issue has become part of public conversation. Trump doesn't think that politicians should be debating this and believes it should be done with confidentiality. Here's Virginia State Senator Richard Black again.
To me, it's kind of a non-story that was hyped up by the Obama administration. And also, you're starting to see some collision between Trump and the intelligence agencies. The intelligence agencies have been almost a government unto themselves. And I think for the first time, they're saying that perhaps they're going to have a president who is going to question what they're doing a little bit more thoroughly. I think that's always a healthy thing. I'm not saying everything that they do is bad or incompetent. Clearly, they are a bloated organization, many facets to the intelligence departments in Washington. They need to slim them down severely, I think. They'd probably make them more efficient, and they'd probably come out with better products. But in any event, I think Trump put it pretty well. He said, this is over. He said, we need to move on to other things. And the other thing that we need to move on to, it is absolutely vital to world peace that we begin to forge a new relationship with Russia. And we need to back away from a possible nuclear war. We have been moving closer and closer to the limits. It is not worth it. And I think President-elect Trump understands this, and I think he's going to try to forge a much more powerful relationship between the two countries.
Well, our correspondent Murad Gazdiev has more now on how mainstream politics and the mainstream media are working hand in hand.
Protesting against the government. Pfft, anarchists. Tired of migrants? Ugh, far right. Really tired of migrants? Fascists.
I accuse our international leaders in Washington, Brussels, London, Paris, and specifically in my own country.
Literally Hitler.
I am your voice.
Reckless populist. Wow, the deplorables. Isn't it great how you can so easily categorize and dismiss hundreds of millions of people?
The ones who are charging us with listening to what Russia tells us to say, I think they've lost all credibility. People look at that and say, same old stuff again, especially when they look a little bit deeper in how they did things much worse than they're even pretending or accusing us have done. But they're looking for scapegoats, and they're looking to try to destroy the messenger. The fake news comes from our own government when they tell us about why we have to go to war.
Problem is, when you label, bracket, and bunch everyone together, it kind of loses its power. It becomes cliché, if not ironic.
The epidemic of malicious fake news and false propaganda that flooded social media over the past year.
Facebook fights back against an avalanche of fake news and hoaxes.
Spread of fake news.
It's fake news.
Fake news.
The Washington Post recently caught publishing a fake story about Russian hackers attacking an American power plant. The Daily Mail just busted running a photo of an American landmine found in Aleppo, saying it was Russian. Another recent example, The Guardian faking a news story about Julian Assange praising Trump. They then apologized. We could go on for hours. The people crying most about fake news are the ones that brought us the most biased U.S. election in history.
This is the beginning of the end for Trump.
The beginning of the end.
Beginning of the end?
This is probably starting of the beginning of the end for Donald Trump.
These examples of fake news alone earned tens of millions of views, shares, and likes before apologies were made.
Mainstream politics and mainstream media are simply not trying to find answers to the demands and the tribulations that regular people have across the world today is exactly why we have these situations. And I think they are absolutely connected. They're embedded with one another, right? Mainstream media, mainstream politics, they work hand in hand. And people are sick and tired of this politics. And I think that people simply want solutions to the vexing problems we have in the world today.
It's simple. The louder you cry, the more people will hear you. You can shriek about the far right, howl about Hitler's, and wail over fake news. Oh, they'll hear you, and eventually stop taking you seriously. Murad Gazdiev, RT.
Thanks for being with us today. Still to come this hour, a BBC parody of the TV show The Real Housewives of Atlanta, featuring jihadi housewives, has angered viewers online. We'll have a look at that story in a couple of minutes.